Today we have a bit of an exclusive for you. We're going to show you the recently released Funk Audio 24E subwoofer, which is a 24-inch subwoofer with 2200 watts RMS. So maybe I'm just used to monster subwoofers like the LFE 24 Ultra, which is 5 feet tall, but this subwoofer, the 24E, I like to call big small because it does have a massive 24-inch driver, but it's a lot more manageable and easier to place around your room. So if you do like amazing subwoofers and of course subwoofer demos, make sure you keep watching. I'm Barrett, this is Spec Tech, welcome to the channel. For the past couple of years, I've been on a bass journey that has taken me from Polk 12-inch subwoofers to some massive 24-inch drivers, one of which I previously mentioned, the LFE 24 Ultra, was 5 feet tall. But I think I'm now closer to bass bliss than I have ever been before. So I still do have the Hardbottle Audio C24 L2 subwoofer, but I have recently sold the Funk Audio LFE 24 Ultra. I am truly gonna miss that subwoofer, guys. I didn't get rid of it because I didn't like it. I got rid of it because I want to have matching subwoofers, and those are just too big for my space. So if I were to add multiples, it would just take up too much space. So I decided to go with something a little bit smaller, even though I am taking a hit in the performance department. All right, so before we get any further into the video, I did want to point out that I paid for this subwoofer with my own money, so nobody has any say or any influence in what I'm about to say. It is my opinion and my opinion alone. But full disclosure, guys, I did receive a 5% discount, but that wasn't because I would be doing videos or because I'm a YouTuber. It is because I was a repeat customer, so I have purchased from Funk Audio before, so I did get the return customer discount. But all that being said, it is getting pretty pricey buying gear for review, so for those of you that may want to help the cause, please consider joining me on Patreon. I've dropped the link down in the description below. All right, guys, how about we do a quick unboxing of the subwoofer? Funk Audio actually does take really good care in packaging his subwoofers, so I think it deserves a little bit of screen time. So as you can see, Funk Audio really does a good job on packaging their products. The entire outer layer is plywood, and then of course you have these sturdy corner pieces, everything's taped together, and then on the inside you have a whole lot of foam. Alright, so let's continue cutting away at this. Alright, so now that I got it on its feet, the only thing else that was packaged in there is the power cord. That was kind of underneath. So here you get a look at the amp, but let's flip this thing around so you can get a good look at the driver. And there we go. Very similar driver to what I already have in the Hardbottle Audio C24, as well as what I had in the Funk LFE 24 Ultra. Although this driver is not quite the same performance level, and neither is the amplifier. So now that we have this Funk Beast unboxed, how about we get into some of the finer details of the Funk Audio 24E. The price of the 24E starts at $4,675 US, but it can go up from there depending if you want some custom work or not. So I have included the link to the Funk Audio website down in the description below, so feel free to click on that for current pricing. So we are going to get to the specs for that price tag in just a second, but real quick before we do, please consider subscribing, tick the bell icon if you do, and please take just 1 second out of your day to click that like button. I really do appreciate it. Okay, so let's get into some of the specs of the 24E, and let me just say that the specs are quite impressive here, starting with the sealed enclosure. So the enclosure measures 26 inches wide, 20 inches deep, and 36 inches high, and it weighs in at 170 pounds. It's a Baltic birch construction with a knotty walnut veneer stained in charcoal with a satin top coat. It is actually the exact same finish that I had in the Funk Audio 24 Ultra, but just in a smaller sealed cabinet. The driver is a 24-inch high-performance carbon fiber woofer that provides some absolutely stunning lows. The amplifier is on the back, and it provides 2200 watts RMS and 5200 watts peak. It consists of 2 XLR inputs, a USB and an Ethernet port for connectivity to the internal DSP, a power switch, and a power cable port. Directly above the amplifier is the display for controlling the gain, the EQ presets, and accessibility to many other functions. The display can be set to either come on when changes are made, and then it will turn off shortly after, or it can remain on with full brightness or remain on with dimmed brightness. And just like my C24, I choose to leave it on under the dimmed setting. So I've ranted and raved about the Funk Audio LFE24 build quality. I'll leave that video in the top right hand corner as well as down in the description below, but the 24E is no exception to build quality. The cabinet has a very subtle yet premium appeal, and the driver is also very robust with a premium look, and it's built to last. It's actually hard to fault a Funk Audio subwoofer in my opinion. They are built like elegant tanks, and they have the performance to match. And speaking of performance, let's talk about the sound quality and the performance of the 24E. And just as with the LFE24 Ultra, although the 24E is a step down in performance as far as output, it still has very clean, accurate bass reproduction. Funk Audio really does have the tendency of providing top-tier performance with all of their creations, and of course the 24E is no exception. I did take some room measurements of the 24E, and this 24-inch Mind Masher actually has a fairly flat response, down to about 7 Hz. So let's have a quick look at the measurements that I took with Rue and the U-Mic 1. Please do keep in mind that I made zero efforts in flattening this response. I merely unboxed the subwoofer, put it on the right-hand side of my front stage, and I turned off anthem room correction in my AVM70, so there is no frequency correction here coming from the processor, and I did not make any changes to the internal DSP on the subwoofer, so it is merely just unboxed, placed on the front stage, and I took some measurements. But with all those things in mind, it actually does have a pretty good response as is, but you are going to see some nulls and some peaks, and that's just the subwoofer interacting with my room in particular. The subwoofer is of course capable of a flat response, but there is going to need to be some effort on the purchaser's part by placing the subwoofer in a good spot, as well as possibly using a mini DSP or the internal DSP to help flatten the response for your particular room. So just to give you a little bit of a lay of the land, I have the C24 on my front stage but on the left hand side, and I have the 24E on the front stage but on the right hand side. I took measurements of each of them separately as well as them together. So let's get into those measurements now and see how they performed. Alright, so as you guys can see here, the red line is with the internal DSP on the subwoofer set to flat, with the master volume on my AVM70 set to -25 and 0 gain on the subwoofer. And guys, these numbers are not max output. I simply just took these measurements to kind of show you the response and how far or how low the subwoofer can go. So please do keep that in mind. This is not max output. That's not what I was going for here. All right, so with the flat, we're looking at 7 Hertz. We're looking at still about 104 decibels, and at 8 Hertz, we're already at about 106. So I do say it's about flat to 7 Hertz because it really starts to roll off after that point. It actually starts to roll off at 8 Hertz, but you're still getting very usable output at 7 Hertz. So as you can see, my room does affect it here. We got a null at about 28 Hertz, and then we got some peaks here. But please just ignore that. Again, guys, this was no effort made to flatten the response. So under the max EQ, internal DSP preset, as you can see, we get quite a bit of a bump in the low end. So at 7 Hertz, we're now at about 111 dB, and at 8 Hertz at almost 14. And again, guys, this was not max output. This is just me playing around. So pretty impressive numbers for this subwoofer. All right, so let's see how it compares to the C24. Please do keep in mind the C24 is much more expensive as well as higher performance. So under the flat EQ, this is also with the volume bumped up a little bit on the C24. But as you can see, it's actually somewhat, I guess, a little bit flatter, but that's because it's in a different position in the room, but you still see some nulls here. And then on the max extension, you get a bit of a bump here, but the volume is a little bit lower here. So here it's -25, and the previous measurement was -23. Sorry guys, I should have kept the volume the same. But either way, these measurements are just here to show you kind of how they are performing in my room as far as the response goes, not for max output. All right, so there you have it. That's the difference between the two subwoofers. So then if we turn, let's just do max extension. So let's turn these off, and then let's see both of the subwoofers. So this is both of them turned on at -28 on the volume. So again, the volume was turned down here a bit. So that's why you're not getting as much. So you can add basically 3 dB to this if I had turned the volume up to -25, like this one was set to and this one was set to. So we would have been over 120, but either way, not a big deal. So under max extension, we're almost 120 dB at 8 Hertz. And then at 7 Hertz, we're 117 or almost 117 dB at 7 Hertz. And then on the flat EQ, so here actually we have the volume set at -25, so let's show that one. So it's actually fairly close to the max extension, but I did have to turn the subwoofer on the the 24E, and that's because the display was on the back, so I had to turn it so I could see what I was doing when I was making changes and whatnot, and I could keep an eye on the clipping lights. But either way, so I did turn it, so you will see a little bit of a difference in the response over here on the higher frequencies. But again, regardless, not looking for a flat response here. I should say there was no effort made to get a flat response, just to kind of show you guys the performance. But again, we're almost 120 decibels at around 7.5 hertz, which is I'm very impressed with, very happy with. I do tend to leave my subwoofers on the max extension setting because I do like a little bit of a house curve, and with the max extension, as you can see here, it does have a bit of a bump in the low end and then starts to drop off towards the higher frequencies, which is what I like in my subwoofers. Alright guys, that concludes the room measurements. Just wanted to show you quickly kind of how the subwoofer is performing. When I do the full review, we will go into these measurements more in depth and probably do some compression testing as well. So as you can see, this subwoofer provides an amazing response. I have usable output down to 7 hertz. And again, guys, these weren't max numbers, but it's still putting out some pretty big numbers, even though I wasn't cranking it up. All right, guys, so now it's time for the fun part of the video, and that is the demos. Please do keep in mind that I am only running the 24E for these demos. The C24 was turned off. And what would any demo section be without the Edge of Tomorrow? So let's start off with the opening scene of Edge of Tomorrow. Here we go. That demo is always a lot of fun, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Everything in my room is shaking and everything is vibrating. All right, so let's move on to the second demo, which is actually a roof sweep. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the roof sweep, it starts with the lower frequencies and then moves its way up. So in this case, I started at 5 hertz and then it goes all the way up to, I believe, 200 hertz. But if you listen in the beginning, in the low frequencies, you can hear my downstairs door shaking against the door frame. One thing I want to point out here is that my home is a 4-level split, and 3 of the levels are wide open to each other. So I really need to pressurize a house with my subwoofers, which is why I have such big subwoofers. If I want big bass, I actually have to have big subwoofers because my rooms are not sealed off. But the only room or the only level that can be sealed off is the basement, and I did have that door closed, and you'll hear it shaking. All right, so let's get into this roof sweep. It is really hard to portray to you guys visually what I'm hearing in my room with this subwoofer, so I thought this was a fun one to include because you can hear the doors shaking even though I'm not at max output. Alright guys, so let's move on to the last demo, and it is actually a Dolby Atmos demo that I like to do to test my subwoofers because it does have a really low rumbly effect when there's some lightning and thunder going on. So I'm just going to fast forward to that part. So here we go with the Dolby Atmos Amaze. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed all these demos. It is actually a lot of fun, but I do want to point out that it is an accurate depiction of what's happening in my room, so please don't take the sound of the bass as any sort of indicating factor, because my room, my recording equipment, as well as the device that you're listening on will greatly affect the sound, so it isn't an accurate depiction of what I'm hearing in my room. It's just more of a fun thing to show you guys. Alright, so I want to sum up my first impressions of the subwoofer and also explain who I think this subwoofer is for. So in my opinion, guys, this subwoofer truly is fantastic in all aspects. It has a premium, beautiful build. It has top-tier performance that shakes my house. And for those of you that like to get that pristine, absolutely flat response, it does have DSP baked in that is fully customizable. So there isn't much not to like with this subwoofer, guys. I truly am happy with it. But if I did have to give one gripe, it's that the display is on the back of the subwoofer, not on the front. So most people, just like me, are going to push the subwoofer up against the wall, and the back is going to be close to the wall, which makes that display not visible as well as unusable because you can't get at it. So if you do want to change anything using the display, you'd have to pull it out and change it. So there is two things things that you can do here. You can ask Nathan to put the display on the front, which he would do, but in my case in particular, he already had this box pretty much built, so I was going to get my subwoofer a lot sooner if I was willing to accept the display on the back versus getting the display put on the front. So I chose to have my subwoofer sooner and paid the price of having the display on the back. Or what you can do is you can just plug in an Ethernet cable to the subwoofer, which gives you access to the entire customizable DSP through the Funk Audio software. So you can change basically anything that you can change on the display, you can change from the software as well. The only thing you won't be able to see are the clipping lights. So you have 3 green lights, 1 yellow and 1 red for warning you when it's clipping. Not that I ever really push my system to that point anyway, but at the same time, I do like to see those lights. In this case, I just won't be able to see them. And another thing that I really like about this subwoofer, and I know that some of you are going to scoff at this, but it's actually quite small for me, or at least manageable. It's easier for me to place because I am coming from the LFE24 Ultra, which has absolutely mind-boggling output, guys. I mean, this thing will shake your neighbor's house, let alone yours, which I am truly going to miss now that I've sold it. But I'm making a sacrifice in the performance department so that I can have more manageable subs that are easier to place in my room. And that was one issue I was having with the LFE24 Ultra. If I ever did want to go with 2 of them, they were just too large for my space anyway, in particular, to have 2 of them to place. So that's why I went with these smaller subwoofers, even though I am sacrificing some output. But with that being said, the 24E is no slouch either. I mean, I'm getting some pretty badass numbers down to 7 Hertz, so there's definitely nothing to complain about in the output department of the 24E. It also pairs very well with my C24. I'm incredibly happy getting 120 decibels at 8 Hertz, and I wasn't even going for max output. And also considering that I've recently paired them with 2 Croson actuators under my seat, providing me with some butt-numbing tactile response, I am in bass heaven right now. So who do I believe should buy the 24E? Well, anybody that is in the market for a high-performance, large driver subwoofer, specifically a 24-inch, that's a little bit more on the affordable side, at least when compared to the other 24-inch commercial competition. Anyone purchasing this subwoofer will be very happy with the appearance as well as the performance, and anyone purchasing more than one of these subwoofers will have absolutely ground-shaking bass and a giant smile on their face. But you know what would put a giant smile on my face is if you would consider subscribing, tick the bell icon if you do, and please take just 1 second out of your day to click that like button. That little guy's feeling lonely down there. And remember to enjoy your systems. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.